Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again. Power rankings across the MLB coming at you a little bit earlier than normal here on this beautiful Sunday. Dodgers and San Diego still playing actually for an afternoon game. Was going to wait till that one was over. It was 1-0 Dodgers, but the Padres just tied it up in the ninth, so who knows how long this game could go for. And I need to get this video out because I got some things to do tonight. We still got the Phillies and the Cardinals playing tonight. Normally I do this kind of halfway through that game, but I wanted to get this out of the way, get this out to you guys so that you guys can debate whether this is the most controversial power rankings out there, whether I'm just out to lunch as per usual, etc., etc. But guys, let's just jump into it. But before we do, make sure you smash that like button and you subscribe to the channel. We do this every week. I do like to make other videos along the way and haven't had the opportunity really to do it so far this season. A lot of other stuff going on. But with hockey season coming up, football season coming up, and all other sports, you can follow me along on Twitter. Link to my Twitter below. I'm tweeting every day, so you can follow me along on there at the very least. All right, let's start things off. Number 30, sitting at the bottom. Oakland A's 0-3 against the Yankees, 1-3 against Seattle. Not a whole lot to say about the A's. I say this every week. They're the worst team in the league. Not a whole lot going for them. They got a long rebuild ahead of them. And just like that, it looks like the Padres have took the lead in the top of the ninth. I can see it from here. So it's not going to affect anything. Let's be honest. Number 29, Washington Nationals 2-1 against Pittsburgh. Doing 0-3 against Miami. They do play another game against Miami tomorrow, early morning for July 4th. Shout out to all my American subscribers, followers, people watching. Happy July 4th to you guys. Probably could have said that at the beginning, but here we are. Nationals, same kind of story. Worst of the National League. Not too much to say. 28, we got Cincinnati Reds 1-2 against the Cubs. 1-2 against the Braves. They stole a nice win off the Braves today, but lost both series, and we see them in the bottom of the National League Central. I do believe they have the worst record, maybe the least amount of wins in the whole league. Might be pulling that out of my butt, but yeah, they're there. Number 27, we have the Detroit Tigers, 1-1 against San Fran. They lost 1-2 against Kansas City, so it dropped to a couple spots this week. I don't really see a whole lot of bright spots. We saw Baez and Amir Garrett get into it again yesterday. But other than that, the Detroit Tigers, they have a long way to go in a division that really is probably one of the most wide open divisions in the American League at the very least. But they haven't made the steps forward this year. I know last year we saw them jump up to right around here in the power rankings. A lot of positivity and expectations coming into this season that Detroit was going to take a step forward. On the other hand, they took a step backwards. And number 26, the Kansas City Royals have passed them. 1-2 against Texas. They won the series against Detroit. So Kansas City 500 week. And honestly, watching them, it looks like they are at least coming around a corner. I think we saw them in last place for a little while, slowly inching their way up. Sure, they're not a playoff team by any means, but we could see them making some steps if some of their young talent starts to come forward and bring this team up. Again, it's a division that there isn't a really big, strong powerhouse. It's just kind of set up for the next couple of years. So anyone that has a game in this division going forward. Number 25, we see them back in the bottom row. Pittsburgh Pirates, 1-2 against Washington. They split the series against the Milwaukee Brewers over the weekend, so that was a big pump up. I had them ahead of the Cubs for the longest time because they've handled the Cubs for the most part. The division's been pretty weak. But their run differential has just fallen apart compared to the Cubs. And like when it comes to any other team, they've just been struggling a lot this season. So Pirates back into that bottom row, and we're just not seeing any stars really pump their way into this team. So a little bit of concern whether their rebuild is actually going to go faster than the Cubs at this point, and that's kind of why I've dropped them down now to this bottom row. Number 24. Dropping a few spots, 1-1 against San Diego, 1-2 against the Rockies over the weekend. So against division rival who they had passed per se in the standings and in my power rankings going forward. Starting to be a little bit of concern with the depth. I was giving them a lot of credit for their pitching so far this year. Now they're bringing in Dallas Keuchel, who got crushed, who's been getting crushed all year, and he's supposed to help with this team right now. And they're pretty much falling apart down the stretch. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams. Won't be surprised if they fall further back this division. They're way out, right? Number 23. One of the hotter teams right now, we got the Chicago Cubs. 2-1 against Cincinnati, 2-1 against the Red Sox. So that's pretty exciting. Nice little run for them. Again, they're kind of all these teams, no chance of playoffs, right? It's going to be kind of what are they going to do next year? Are they going to take some steps forward next year or not? They got some young guys, some guys stepping up, and the pitchers somewhat consistent, at least getting it done for them. But the Cubs, a little bit hot. They've been a little bit streaky this year. They've had a couple streaky, good positives, and on the other side, a couple bad streaks too along the way. Number 22, we got Colorado Rockies, 2-1 against the Dodgers, 2-1 against Arizona. They were happy to see Chris Bryant, their big signing, come back this week. So a lot of positivity there. They're at home. They beat the Dodgers, so that was nice. And then they handled Arizona, both winning series. We might start to see. Honestly, most of their losses now, looking back to that terrible streak they've been on, Chris Bryant wasn't in the lineup. I know it's just one player and it's baseball, but he adds a lot to this team. And with CJ Cron, who's a monster, I think over Arizona at least, they are much better off. And I'm just seeing, as we're talking here, San Diego looks like they crushed a home run, so they're going to take a big lead here in this game that's going on. So there's that. Number 21, we got the LA Angels. Just terrible. 2-1 against the White Sox. So they beat the White Sox. Then they got crushed by Houston over the weekend, lost all three. Angels have just been a fall from the top, really, and they're pretty much getting to the point where they're out of it. They did beat the White Sox at home, and they were close games. They got blown out the one game that they lost, and then the other games they kind of sketched through. That's kind of why I got number 20 on the White Sox. 1-2 against the Angels. Then they swept San Fran over the weekend, so a little bit of the opposite. They lost to the series, but I think at the end of the day, I'm still having them ahead. The White Sox technically, I think, have a much, much better percentage chance of making the playoffs than the Angels. And I think in a long series, I would take the White Sox right now. I know the Angels have all these players that I don't know what it is. The Angels just cannot put it together. Number 19, dropping one spot out of the third row. We got the Baltimore Orioles, 1-2 against Seattle, 1-2 against Minnesota. So they lost both series this week. I think overall the road trip they were on, they're 500, something like that. So it was a little bit of an exciting road trip. But this week was a big test for the O's in terms of power rankings. They were against two pretty solid teams. One was below coming into the week. Another one was a top 10 team on the road. Can they at least pull off a 500? And they couldn't. So a little bit of that, a little bit of destroy. They're lucky to pull one out today for the win. Number 18, Seattle. Just talking about them against Baltimore, right? 2-1 against Baltimore, 3-1 against Oakland. So Seattle has had an interesting year. They were up high pretty early when they were having a good April. I think they fell. They might have fallen as low as like 21, 22 last week, but they bounced back and they beat up on both teams now that are below them. A's taking 3-4, beat the O's at home. So a little bit of excitement there. At the end of the day, Seattle is tough ways out of it for playoffs. I think one thing I'm saying here with playoff teams, these teams are kind of out of it. I would say if all these teams up here, Chicago probably has the best shot of it, and that is merely because their division is a little bit weaker, top-heavy wise, than the rest of them. Number 17, Texas Rangers, 2-1 against Kansas City, 1-2 against the Mets. A 500 week for basically a 500 team. Not too much else to say for that, honestly. 16, at the Miami Marlins, 1-2 against St. Louis, 3-0 against Washington. They play Washington again tomorrow. I already talked about that. They lost. Miami's one of those teams that they managed to beat those teams below them, like Washington, very, very well. They put up fights against these teams ahead of them, like the Cardinals, like this week, stealing one, but they just don't go on runs. They had that 9 or 10 game winning streak earlier in the year, but for the most part, they've been around 500, sub 500 all season, even last year, et cetera, et cetera. But they are in the playoff race, wild card race. I think they're like 4.5, 5 games out. So technically, if they go on a run enough, but they're going to have to start winning against the teams ahead of them. So keep your eye on that. They have the capability, really. I think they have the pitching to be able to do it. They have the bats that can show up on a given day to win those tight games. So keep your eye on these Marlins. This is probably as low as they go, and you could see them inch up should they put themselves in the ring for a playoff race. Number 15, San Francisco Giants. 1-1 against Detroit, 0-3 against the White Sox. It's just been a rough season for the Giants, and power rankings wise, they just slowly, one by one, have been falling down this year, and that's pretty much the case. I think they dropped another spot this week. They fall out of the wild card spots over the past couple of weeks, and now they're slowly falling apart. They need to win against teams that are better than them. It's the same kind of story as the Marlins. Number 14, we're at Philadelphia, not the Flyers, the Phillies. 1-2 against Atlanta, 1-1 against St. Louis, and again, they're playing tonight. They're sending Zach Wheeler out for them, so big spot for them to take a big win against the Cardinals, should they do it. At the end of the day, they're still kind of fighting for that last wild card spot too, and they're so inconsistent. It's like the story of the Phillies' career, at least the last 5 years. Just a 500 ball club, can't seem to get it going, even though on paper, this is a good team. Having Harper out right now is a little bit painful, but they are above 500. If they can keep it going, that's going to be a good sign for them. Number 13, we have the Cleveland Guardians. 3-2 against Minnesota, 1-2 against the Yankees over the weekend. So 5 games against Minnesota early in the week, and they did manage to steal 3 of 5. But these teams have played a lot over the past 2 or 3 weeks, it seems like, and pretty much 500 split down the middle. So right now, they have to close that gap. I think they held on to the division lead for 1 or 2 days a couple weeks ago. They're still right there in it, right there on the borderline. This is like borderline playoff, like top 12 teams make the playoffs, right? Not necessarily the top 12 are in playoff spots right now, but yeah, this is kind of where I see them as basically the bubble team of the playoffs behind the Twins, and the only way they're going to get into it, in my opinion, is if they do win this division. Number 12, we have the Boston Red Sox, 1-2 against Toronto, 1-2 against the Cubs. A losing week after I finally gave them some credit and put them up in the 10th, but I think they've lost every series to the Jays this year, so they're going to be punished for that. And losing to the Cubs over the weekend, this is a series they need to win to maintain in this race. Definitely this American League East, super stacked. They're 4th, and they're number 12 in the power rankings, so it just goes to show what we're dealing with. Number 11, Toronto Blue Jays, 2-1 against Boston, 2-3 against Tampa. So this series over the weekend against Tampa Bay was very interesting. They had a doubleheader on Saturday, which is super strange for those two teams because obviously they're both indoor teams, so they don't ever have rain delays, etc. that would result in that kind of doubleheader. It looks like it was just one that was on the schedule. But Toronto lost those two. They lost Sunday, so they had won the first 2 games, and then Tampa came back and saw it. We saw a problem with Toronto's pitching depth for sure. Gosman left the game early on Saturday after a comebacker hit him in the foot. We'll see if that punished them, but the depth seems to be a big concern for the Blue Jays. I do have a concern for them. That's why I do give Tampa Bay the edge on them at number 10 right now. 0-2 against Milwaukee, though, before winning this series against the Jays. So the one against the Jays, technically right now, Tampa Bay is behind the Jays. I think half a game in the standings. I think these two are tied at half a game. But realistically, it's going to come down to who beats who down the stretch, right? Tampa Bay, McClanahan just balling out, and he really carried the team in the win after Gosman left yesterday, and their bats came alive in the second half of the series with the Jays. I don't know what it is. Tampa Bay always seems to have the number of American League East teams. The one team that they've been struggling with this year is the Yankees, but who hasn't struggled? The Yankees, right? Number 9, Minnesota Twins, 2-3 against Cleveland, 2-1 against Baltimore. I say this every week, basically, about the Twins. They handled the business against the teams they need to. Prime example, Baltimore. They won the series at home, big, after losing a 5-game set with the Guardians. They came in and beat Baltimore while the Guardians struggled and had a tough game against the Yankees and et cetera there. So, yeah, number 8, Milwaukee Brewers, 2-0 against Tampa, 2-2 against Pittsburgh. I do know that they're leading the division, but I don't have them top in the division on the power rankings. I just think their pitching has been carrying them in those tight games, but come playoff time and come when they're playing top teams, it's not going to be enough. They need to find some bats. We saw them wake up for 19 runs or something like that in the one game over the weekend against the Pirates, but they still lost 2 of the games against the Pirates. They can't be doing that. They're going to keep up against this other team, number 7, the Cardinals. I just still think they went 2-1 against Miami, 1-1 against Philly. I already talked about it. They're playing tonight. I just think Cardinals overall are better than Milwaukee, and over a long course in the rest of the season, I think they're going to end up ahead. That's pretty much why they're number 7. Number 6, Atlanta Braves, 2-1 against Philly, 2-1 against Cincinnati. They continue their winning ways. They're inching slowly but surely, trying to get back in the race for top of the division. Got a little bit of work left to do. They did dig themselves quite the hole, but if they keep playing the way they are, then I expect them to stay up there. Number 5, San Diego Padres, 1-1 against Arizona. I had penciled them in for 0-4 against the Dodgers, but it looks like they are coming back to win that one. Let's take a quick look. Yeah, it's 4-2 in the bottom of the 9th, so that game's getting close to over. Dodgers technically could come back, but it's not going to make a difference in the power rankings overall. It was a tough week for the Padres, and they probably are holding on to this 5th spot by the skin of their teeth, right? Just can't quite put these other teams ahead of them. But if the Padres continue to struggle and these other teams continue, especially Atlanta, or one of these teams continue to play as solid as they are, Padres are pretty much falling out of the chance at winning this division because the Dodgers have been so good. So it's wild card or not for them at this point. Number 4, we got the New York Mets, 0-2 against Houston, 2-1 against Texas. So a little bit of a 5-game week for the Mets. They've been slowly falling back down a little bit closer to 600 after being high 600s for a while. It's just been a little bit no streaks really being put together. So keep your eye on that. Right now they're firm in lead in that division, but we still have a lot of games to see them play against the Braves and other division foes. So it's going to come down to whether that happens. Of course, they're waiting for Scherzer to come back, who's a big part of that rotation. Number 3, we got the Dodgers 1-2 against Colorado. We're going to call it 3-1 against the Padres after Kimbrel blew this one. And Dodgers, great run differential, and they're starting to build a bigger and bigger lead in this division, this very strong division at that. So, of course, on paper, the Dodgers are super stacked. Number 2, new spot for these guys. We got the New York Yankees. They went 3-0 against Oakland. And they had a 1-game set against Houston that they lost. And then they went 2-1 against Cleveland over the weekend. Dropped in number 2, and really comes down to this week. They lost to Houston. Last weekend, on the weekend, they went 2-2. And I actually had Houston at number 1 for temporary, maybe like half a game before that. And then Yankees managed to come back. And I wasn't going to dethrone them just for a 2-2 series against Houston, even though Houston looked pretty good. And honestly, Houston could have taken all 4 of those games. Easily should have been 3-1. But we have Houston up top now, 2-0 against the Mets. They beat the Yankees. They swept the Angels for 6-0 week. Houston's been just red hot for like 5 weeks in a row now. I think they've itched and clawed and fought their way up from I think they were like maybe 8 as low as I had them at some point in this. But they've been slowly chipping. Now I just can't do it anymore. I know the Yankees have the best record in MLB, I know. But based on what we just watched over the weekend, not over the weekend, but over the past 2 weeks, Houston just seems like they have their number a little bit stronger. And in a 7-game series, they're probably going in 7. And then it's going to come down to who has home field advantage, maybe. Sure, it's going to be the Yankees as of right now. But the Yankees do have the American League East. They're going to have a lot harder schedules down the stretch. Whereas Houston, they get to play Oakland. They get to play Texas. They get to play the Angels. These 3 teams are all, whereas the Yankees have all top 12 teams, and even their worst teams is number 19. That's how I'm doing it, and that's where we have it for this week. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget, like, subscribe, join the party, join the Twitter, join the Discord, etc., etc. And guys, we'll see you out there for that next video. Peace out.